Hello everyone and welcome back to Live, Laugh, Leah. Today I'll be showing you how I upholstered these bar stools. I purchased these 3 bar stools from Facebook Marketplace for $30 total, which is such a steal. I was looking for weeks for some bar stools of the perfect height, the perfect material, and this is what I have been looking for. And most of the stools that I've found were $30 per chair, but these were only $10 per chair, so it was such a deal. So right now I am taking apart the stool. I took off all the screws holding in the bottom of the seat. And then here I'm showing that there are these anchors inside the wood, and I just want to tap those out so that I don't lose them in this process. And then I just put all the screws and anchors to the side. And so this seat is glued in. Usually the seats are screwed in, but this one is super glued in, so I'm just using my hand strength and a flathead screwdriver to try to pry that out. I want to be really careful because I want to reuse the bottom base of this seat. So once I finally get that out, I just put this frame to the side. There is a little bit of fabric and glue still left in there, but we'll get to that later. Right now I'm just going to pull off this dust cover. This is what makes it look nice and neat underneath. And then I'm going to use some needle-noosed pliers to pull out all the staples. I found the best way to do this is to grab a hold of the fabric and lift up and out at the same time. This allows me to pull out multiple staples at one time, and it's just quick and easy compared to taking out each individual staple. The corners were definitely the hardest part because of how many staples there were, and sometimes the fabric did rip, but this was definitely the best method. So once that's done, I am taking off the material. I use a flathead screwdriver to get as much foam off as possible. It was glued to the bottom, and that's what it looks like on the inside. It was moldy and just really gross. And then I just take my needle-nose pliers to get the rest of the staples and the flathead screwdriver to get any foam off. So once all the staples were out, I used an Orbital sander to clean everything up and take off any extra material that was left on the wood. Alright, so I took apart the base of the chair, and I'm just going to take my handy dandy wood cleaner and just wipe off all the pieces. I try to keep it in the structure so that it's easier to put back together, but yeah, I'm not going to do anything special to it, like stain it a different color or anything. So yeah. You might think I was over the top to take apart this whole base of the chair just to clean it, but these chairs were very, very dusty when I got them, and it made a huge difference by just using a simple wood cleaner to go over the wood. So here I am using a 120 grit sandpaper to clean up the edges of where the seat was glued into the wood frame. I wanted to use a more fine piece of sandpaper because I didn't want to change the shape of the lip that the seat was going to sit into, and this really helped just getting all the extra glue off the sides. Alright, so now we're getting to the fun part of upholstering. I got this high density foam. It's a pack of 2, and they're both 1 inch thick, and this is the perfect size for the shape of the wood that came with the chairs. You can go with a thicker size, but you would need to buy more fabric to cover the seat and I just think that the 1 inch was a good height. So I outlined it with permanent marker, and then I used regular scissors to cut the foam. I would suggest using maybe a serrated knife. I found that using scissors made the edges more jagged just because of the way that the scissors operate. You are squishing the foam, so it's going to result in a more uneven cut than if you used a serrated knife. You just have an up and down motion, so it's going to be more straight. So now I'm taking the foam and trying to figure out where I want the fabric to be. I want the fabric to line up in the middle, so I am giving a generous amount of fabric on each of the sides just so that I have enough to work with when I'm trying to staple. You want to make sure that you're using the foam and not just the wood piece, because you want the fabric to wrap around the wood piece and still have that extra fabric to work with. One of the reasons that I really like this fabric is because of the pattern. The lines help me make sure that I am cutting straight edges, and I use the first one that I cut as a template for the next two. And the fabric that I got is upholstery fabric, so it is on the thicker side. I got it from Joann, and there's always a sale going on for fabric at Joann, or they have coupons for 40% off one item or something like that. So I would definitely suggest going to check out Joann and their fabrics. I would also say to use some fabric scissors when cutting, because I started off using regular scissors not realizing why it's so hard to cut, and then I realized it's because I'm not using fabric scissors. And then I also got the dust cover fabric from Joann as well. It's just a very thin piece of fabric. I used the wood piece as a guide for how thick I want it to be. I do want to fold over the sides, so I want a little bit extra fabric on the sides, but I don't want too much to make it bulky, so I'm just trying to outline it as best as I can without having too much extra fabric. This next part is not necessary for upholstery, but it is highly recommended. So this is batting. It's made out of 100% cotton, and it provides an extra layer of cushion and makes the foam feel less stiff. Luckily, I had this in my basement, so I did not have to purchase it, but it can be purchased from any craft store. I do not want the batting to wrap fully around the foam to the underside, because it will give an extra layer of bulk and it will make it more difficult to sit the cushion into the wood frame. So I'm just using the foam as a guide and cutting the batting to the base of the sides. And then to start stapling, you layer, it's going to be the wood piece, then the foam, then the batting, then the fabric. And I wanted to make sure that the center of the fabric was in the center of the seat, and then I go ahead and start stapling. I staple each of the sides first and then the corners, and I pull as hard as I can so there's not that much give. I'm using a DeWalt stapler, and you just want to staple as much as you can. You don't want this fabric coming loose. If you think that you have enough staples, just give it a few extra staples just in case. My technique was that if I can pull it still, if I can pull the fabric and it's moving, then there's not enough staples. And doing the corners, I didn't want to crease in the corners, so I tried to pull it as even as possible so that there were no creases. And it actually worked out very, very well. It was less stressful than I thought it was going to be. And then I used my fabric scissors and I cut off the extra fabric. This is a dry fit of how it's going to look. I think it's looking very good. The center of the fabric, it's not like uneven, the lines. The fabric is looking smooth, just going nice and slow, trying to make sure that there were no creases when stapling the corners. So now I'm taking the material for the desk cover and I'm putting it on, and then I fold over the sides. And I'm going to do the same schedule of stapling that I did for the fabric. I'm going to do side 1 and then do the one across from it. I'm folding over the edge, just to the edge of the wood piece. One thing that I want to mention about using a staple gun is that you want to staple on a flat surface. So here I am positioning the staple gun on the wood backing. It would be very difficult to get a good clean staple if the staple gun was rotated 180 degrees. You will still see the staples from underneath. Having the desk cover just makes everything look more neat. You also don't need as many staples, enough to make sure that nothing is peeking through, and just to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. Now for the final assembly, I'm using some E6000 and applying a light coat on the lip of the wood seat frame. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick in my seat cushion and basically let gravity do its work. I just want to make sure that it's sitting in correctly, pushing in on all sides. You can even sit on it to make sure that it's in correctly. I'm looking on the sides and underneath to make sure that no E6000 has leaked through, and it's looking like we're all good. I didn't really have a problem with any of the cushions. Again, here is the before shot, and here's the after. I'm so happy with how they turned out. I did end up putting felt feet on the bottom of the legs. I also sprayed the fabric with some Scotchgard fabric protector to protect it from liquids. And there was some discoloration in the wood, so I just used some shoe polish to darken up those spots. These stools make the perfect addition to my kitchen. Upholstery is a great way to change the whole look of a piece of furniture, and I would highly recommend it to anyone looking to spice up any room in their house. This was my first attempt at upholstery, and I found it to be super fun and super simple. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.